George.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I'm Tim Scrace from Scrace Architects. We set up our practice to see and shape space differently. So I'm here with George Scott Welsh from EQ Hive. When you put flexibility into that, it becomes, it unearths all these different things. So you might have someone who is making a noise somewhere next to someone who wants a quiet meeting. And I guess that's the challenge of creating these flexible spaces where people are constantly transitioning. Is that something you've come across?
Yes, I think firstly the office tenant is quite different in their requirements to many other commercial tenants. If you've got a factory or light industrial, then there's quite a lot of capex for that unit. So having a lease inside the act is important, having a long-term property is important. Or if you're in retail, you need footfall, you need to be exactly in the right location, whereas office usage, location is less important.
Yeah.
There's typically not much capital investment into that office. It's a few desks, a paint, a bit of branding. So the different the array of offices that a tenant might take is quite wide.
Yeah.
And so the tenants are now looking for community, collaboration, a creative environment so that they can flourish, flexibility, and using buildings like this and underperforming, disused buildings to create those is really fun, really exciting. The second point is around multiple different businesses using the same space. So largely the office environment is relatively quiet. Post-COVID there's a lot more zooming. So in some of our co-working rooms, which might be 10, 15, 20 desks, they'll all be separate individual companies or individuals that work for other companies that now don't commute so much and they can't work from home. They'll be on Zoom quite a lot. So that does create its own issues. We try to provide phone boxes and private calling spaces in those co-working rooms.
As you'd imagine, those booths were always something part of commercial design. You'd always have a meeting booth, or you put in a bit. With a space like this, for example, there's always a need from the acoustic point of view to put in a bit of furnishing, or a few acoustic panels just to kind of offset that kind of.
What sort of turnaround times do you have for the flexibility? Like how fast can you sort of throw up a wall or a partition?
So I visited an amazing workspace in London many years ago, maybe 5-6 years ago, and they were using properties and planning as guardians of those properties. So big office blocks that were converting into resi and created flexible workspaces in there. And I remember walking in, and you walked in and on the floor was a pile of CLS, some doors, some plasterboard, a nail gun, and you just say, I'd like that space there, and they'll just bash up a wall. So we're not quite that
hands-on.
But we're very, very flexible. So we can, we can take walls down, put walls up. We can partition off office space to be as accommodating to the tenants as possible. That we might have incurred in those co-working spaces, they're very, very few and far between. So temperature regulation is always one that's going to be pertinent, but that's the same in every household in the country.
I can tell you a trick with that.
Go on.
But probably as long as people aren't listening, I think.
Okay. Well, later then. We generally we've had very few problems. I could list them on one hand. I've had a few customers who've been very loud, and that's just the nature of their job. They might have been in a sales role, and they're quite loud, and that does disturb other people. So we try and solve that with phone boxes. We'll often have a word with that customer. Yeah, so the private calls, we actually build red phone boxes, and they might be in the corner of an office or in the corridor, and the customers can go in there and do a Zoom or make their calls. Other problems, we have had a couple of odour problems which happen every now and again in the summer when it's really hot. And it's very difficult, but it would be no different to that conversation within a team, within a single company. You have less jurisdiction when they're not employed by you, but largely, everyone understands when they sign up, they are in what we call semi-public space. So it's secure and private, but you are with other people you're not contracted to.
Yeah. Tim, in terms of the design of a space, is there anything you can do with the design of it that could make a problem like that not even occur? With the airflow or.
I think those, the typical things that you sort of encounter in office design is the servicing of the space, as much as anything, and always the M&E. But it's sort of, that can help in terms of conditioning the space and making people feel comfortable. I think, like George sort of reflected upon, it's kind of like there is an individual comfort to kind of a space. So, I know that I'll turn the heating down, whereas someone else in the house might turn the heating up in the winter months. So there's always that within a shared space.
Yeah.
And you can't overcome that, but what you can do is you can give people the power to turn things up and down. You can give a sense of control to that space, and it's about that sharing of that space that I think probably you're covering off in a lot of your kind of almost your ground rules. The conditioning of the space acoustically is very important.
Yeah, we have had some problems there. So we do prefer office space with ceiling panels, because they're just the best acoustically, although they're not particularly attractive or cool or trendy. They're just from a sound. They're so functional. We've just put soundboards in our Brockenhurst co-working rooms, for example, and we've got further soundproofing to do, acoustic work to do. But largely across quite a few spaces, hundreds of people, we just don't have problems.
No.
Because people like equilibrium generally, and they come to work to get on, as in be productive, and so we largely find the opposite, in that really good relationships are formed, collaborations.
I think almost sort of post-lockdown there's more of an understanding almost a little bit as well, which helps. So, in terms of that space, there's sort of that collaborative nature to things maybe.
Yeah, and I also think that if you've got 20 people in a room and they aren't all working for the same company, they've got no reason to scrutinise what any of the other people in the room are doing, whether it's, not working or, there's a real kind of cohesion.
Culture of togetherness.
Correct. And I think that's really great. In fact, most of our customers will solve on one, kind of loneliness and isolation, wanting to be out of the house in an environment where they feel that they're human. Zoom and Teams has changed the environment further in that you don't have to be in the town centre to go to a meeting, because a lot of those meetings now happen online.
And we're sort of given their choice, aren't we? I think it's almost the choice of the space or the choice of whether to go to work or not, and that puts a little, puts a sort of rose-tinted view on our experiences over the past few years, but actually maybe that's the positive side of things, and maybe a way to kind of end on for the time being. So thanks very much for your time. We're going to have a look at another space, shall we?
Yeah, perfect.